Hi everyone, this is John Burness talking to all of you again, and I'm just here to provide another video performance. This is my second or third one of me showing an example of a form of sound poetry that I developed, which has the Latin term of Poesis Disintegrativa Simultanea, which is a form of sound poetry that I invented a few months ago. I made my first few examples on a Bandcamp recording album, a home recorded album that you can put out, which is called, the album name is the technique name, Poesis Disintegrativa Simultanea. And I did another video performance a few months ago of an example called Verisimilitude I. And I'm doing another example to showcase to all of you right now, with the purpose of hopefully inspiring other people to do this technique and to do their own examples of it and perform their own examples, which is the goal of any artist, really. There's really no other goal to do art than that. And of course, I always love explaining the inspiration and process of my projects, because I think it humanizes it a bit, and it's, in my opinion, probably the best antidote to this AI takeover, so we can maintain the human touch in art. So when I was in high school, being about 14 or 15, I really enjoyed listening to lectures by Alan Watts and Terence McKenna. And there was an excerpt from a Terence McKenna video that still has stuck with me all these years later. And I'm going to read to you the excerpt, the part that struck me in particular, and it goes like this. And it's detailing his very first DMT trip. The first DMT trip was absolutely appalling. I mean, I felt like the big people were home. And I just broken into this place where these things were turning and saying, "What is this?" You know, then the next time they had the little bassinets and the colored dancing things and the little toys already. But the first time they were taken by surprise, and they were just, you know, does anyone have a fly swatter handy? And the part that struck me about that part of the talk was just the phrase, "the big people were home." I just love the lack of context around that phrase. I still, even now, have no idea what he's talking about, even as I'm reading this excerpt. And I guess partly just on this tangent here, sometimes it's very necessary to say things that are biting and striking, or to do things that are biting and striking in art and in writing without giving them any context. And I learned that from a press conference video I watched on Quentin Tarantino, where he talked about how sometimes it's important to not talk about what your films are about, because he said and he talks about how he was so grateful of how creative fans can get around theories about films. And I guess this was my nerdiness, I guess, around this form of art, even though it wasn't really a form of art at all. It was just a talk he was giving. And the lack of context around the phrase, "the big people were home," without just this very striking image with no further context around it, nothing, no explanation, nothing. And it just, sometimes it's good to do that, because then that opens doors in people's minds. And that leads me to my second point, which is that even your own works of art, even your own body of work, you don't know everything about. You may know everything about them, you may know how they were created, but you don't know everything around them. Sometimes we don't really know what could arise from it, or what could transpire from our own forms of art. And that is exactly what art history is. It's people creating art, and then somebody else years or decades later looks at this inspiring form of art, and they take their own thing out of it, and sometimes to the surprise of the original artist. They didn't know that, they didn't even notice what was in their own works of art, which kind of keeps me going as an artist too, is when I see people look at my art and then I see them notice things that I didn't even notice. It's very inspiring. So about the technique, I've explained it a lot, but I guess I'll explain it again. So Poesis Disintegrativa Simultanea is basically where I take a segment of a phrase. It's sort of, I think, the perfect bridge between Brian Geison's permutation poetry and traditional sound poetry, and it's sort of a marriage between those two. But what differs from Brian Geison is, instead of taking small text excerpts and just reshuffling them on and on, I take small text excerpts and make them more and more phonetic, make them more and more nonsensical as it goes on. So that's, again, another explanation of this technique. And I'm going to now perform for you, or recite to you, the newest example of Poesis Disintegrativa Simultanea, titled The Big People Were Home. It goes like this. The big people were home. Thu 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 book people were home. Thu book people were home. Thu book people woo home. Thuk book people woo home. Thuk buck people woo home. Thuk buck people woo home. Thuk buck people rook home. Thuk bucker puggle rook home. Thuk bucker puggle rug home. Thork bor puggle ruch home. Thork bor puggle rum home. Thork bur puggle rum home. Thork bur puckle rum home. Thurk bur puckle rum home. Thurk burk puckle rum home. Thruck burk puckle rung home. So that is my newest this is my newest rendition of my original technique, and I hope you found it inspiring, even in a small way. Greatly appreciated. And thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will do more of these in the future.